she also persuaded them that they were not given enough money anyhow. And so we got a lot of funds for that project. But then came Peggy, because whilst we were busily organizing the details of what the project would be about, one had been was established, and Peggy had come to Barbados. And we wanted to find a way, you see, because Women and Development Unit was the only unit on the campus that had the word women in its title. So we had to connect with them, just as a strategic move. We also had to connect with the women's organizations. At that time, we weren't talking about the women's movement. We weren't talking about feminism, because we didn't even know the word, as it were. But we were very conscious of the fact that it was women's organizations which had made the recommendation, did the negotiations and the lobbying to get one established. So in a sense, you could almost say that it is the women's organizations that started the whole process of women's studies in the region. And so that project, therefore, for us, had to include women's organizations somehow or other. Okay. So that's how it got started. Really.
And maybe later on you can talk about your expectations of the continuation of that project, because we were talking informally about how you thought maybe there should have been a IICP 2 and 3 and so on. But I move on now to Elsa. So Elsa, was it feminism that brought you into this field, and what made you work so hard to formalize and institutionalize gender studies?
No, it wasn't feminism. I started my career as a teacher. And I was a science teacher, and I taught in co-educational schools. A co-educational school in London and a co-educational school in Jamaica. One of the things that puzzled me was the difference between the girls and the boys in terms of their classroom behavior, their study patterns, their relationships with the teachers, with discipline, with order, with structure, with the whole school system. And so when I did my doctoral work in the 1970s, an important element in that was looking at achievement comparing boys and girls. Feminists did not enter the entire thesis, how many pages, because it just was not a word that we knew at the time. In having done the thesis, in 1982, Marlene Hamilton from the School of Education spoke to me about a meeting. She was very excited. She had gone to a meeting in 1982 in Barbados where Joycelin Massiah, Peggy Antrobus, Rhoda Reddock, and a number of other people started talking about introducing a program of women's studies in the university. And she said, you know, this is going to be very exciting. And I think right away we should start writing a course for the Faculty of Education, as it was at the time. And she had data from her study, her PhD. I had data from my PhD. And we had other data which we had started doing just from a general interest point of view. And we started pulling that together. The Women and Development Studies groups were there. I remember in 1983, I accompanied Rhoda and Joycelin and Peggy and Idris Bird from Antigua to the Association of Atlantic Universities in Halifax, where we linked with them. Jane Parpott, who was here, was a part of that meeting as well. And we spoke about the whole business of women's studies in an academic setting. What would women's studies in the academy look like? Because they had a program in the Association of Atlantic Universities. We came back and we started talking to our university people. I recall a number of meetings. I remember Sir Keith Hunt, who was principal of Cave Hill, telling us that we mustn't put too much hope in the fact that the university would accept any program in women's studies. And I also remember, I don't know how it came about, but I remember that Lucille Mayer asked me to come with her because she had to speak with the then Vice Chancellor, AZ Preston about introducing this Women and Development Studies program. She had been appointed director of the first project for which the funds had been approved. And it was in 1985-86, I recall. And I went with her. And it was a meeting which I will never forget, because the Vice Chancellor was totally unreceptive. And Lucille was her usual calm, elegant, diplomatic self, and she just told him that it had to happen. And by the time we left his office, I just sat there, watched, mesmerized, to see how she took his words and made them into words which were now on the side of introducing women's studies. And I mean, it's a lesson I've never forgotten. But at the end of that meeting, he agreed that we could go ahead with the project, but he was not giving us any long-term promise. It was just a matter of, the feeling you got was, boy, I can't fight Lucille anymore. Let me just give her what she wants for the time being and see what will happen. It probably won't come to anything, so let us just go ahead with that. So that was it. I left the university soon after that to go to another, and took up another post. When the position, but during that time, during the period of my absence, I did supervise students. I continued being a member of the Women and Development Studies group on the Mona campus. I prepared and delivered papers in the disciplinary seminars which were taking place for education. I attended all the sessions, so I was very involved with the campus group. And when the post was advertised, when the project was actually coming on stream and had come on stream, and now the institutionalization was to be executed, the advertisement was for a regional coordinator for the project, professor regional coordinator for the project, and I applied for the post, and I got the post. So when I came back to the university, it was 1992, and my task was to set up the Center for Gender and Development Studies. So it was a matter that the groundwork had been done.
Yes.
The Women and Development Studies groups had worked across for 10 years. For 10 years. They had held seminars, they had gotten money. The Ford Foundation provided a lot of the funds. Commonwealth Secretariat provided funds, but the major funding came from the government of the Netherlands. And the thing with the government of the Netherlands funds was that it twinned us with the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague. And so we had an institution which was a sort of mentoring, in a sort of mentoring relationship with UWI. And their expertise helped us in terms of knowing where we were going. They introduced us to the feminism, so that we then understood the word. We had the first interdisciplinary seminar in 1986, and